Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Hi Krishna everyone, good morning. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam. Nitai Gaur Hari Gaur, Hari Gaur, Hari Gaur, Nitai Gaur Hari Gaur. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chanda, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chanda, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chanda, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chanda, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Vigrahamurtiyasam Stapitam yena bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Guran Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Bhagan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sukadevi Hanamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarudhyascha Kripa Sindhudevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming this morning. So today we're continuing discussion on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So yesterday we talked about, this is the beautiful Chaitanya Charitamrita right here. And yesterday we talked about how Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami compiled the Chaitanya Charitamrita all by dictation, all by empowerment. And today we'll look at one of the reasons why this Chaitanya Charitamrita is such an incredible literature. So today we're reading from, again, the 8th chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And today we're reading from text number 6. So you can, is it big enough? Yeah. Shall I make it bigger? E sabna mane jai pandita shakala E shabana mane jai pandita shakala Rasabara vidya patha bheke kola khala Dasabara vidya patha bheka kola hala E sabana mane jai pandita shakala E shabana mane jai pandita shakala Dasabara vidya patha bheka kola hala Dasabara vidya patha bheka kola hala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Dasabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Mataji's?
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabara Vidyapati Vakira Kulhala
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Sabanamani Pandita Sakala
Tasha Vidyapati Vikulaha
Asabara Vidyapata Vikakulahala.
Okay, so we do the word for word. So, Bengali is very sweet, very beautiful, that even when someone's saying something very heavy, it sounds like very beautiful. You'll see it's actually a very heavy statement, but it didn't sound like it. Ei Sabha, all these, na, does not, mane, accept, jay, anyone, pandita, so-called learned, sakala, all, asaba, of all of them, vidyapat, educational cultivation, bheka, of frogs, Kolahala, tumultuous sound. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The education cultivated by so-called learned scholars who do not believe these statements of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the tumultuous croaking of frogs. Yes, give us a demonstration. The croaking of the frogs in the rainy seasons resounds very loudly in the forest, with the result that the snakes, hearing the croaking in the darkness, approach the frogs and swallow them. Similarly, the so-called educational vibrations of the tongues of university UCL professors who do not have spiritual knowledge is like the croaking of frogs. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So here Kaviraj Goswami is presenting Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he's presenting it as the highest philosophy, the highest education. In the world today, so many people know so many things, they study so many different subjects. But the result of all of that philosophy, the result of all of that education is ultimately frustration. It doesn't bring happiness. And therefore, Kaviraj Goswami says it's like frogs who call out very loudly, but what they don't realize is they're speaking very loudly, projecting to the whole world, but they don't realize that in the process they're inviting their own death in the form of the snake of time. Time overcomes them. I was telling the devotees recently, this verse stood out to me because we were in Brajamandal and we were going around forest to forest. And one night we were sleeping out in tents.
So one night we heard some screaming in the tent next to us. So in the morning we asked what happened, and they said in the middle of the night we saw a huge snake. I mean, imagine you wake up in the middle of the night with a snake next to you. Huge snake. So I was in the tent next to them. So I was like, oh my God, the snake is coming. Anyway, the good thing about Brajamandal is that you move place to place. So luckily we weren't in that same place for more than one night. So that was breathing a sigh of relief. So we got to the next place. And the very next day, we put the tent up. And then I was drying my gumsha at the back. And lo and behold, I saw a huge snake skin. You know, snakes shed their skin. So here it was, another snake. And it was a big one. It's a big snake skin. I was like, the snake is coming. And you wouldn't believe it, the very next day, you know, in Vrindavan, for those who of you have been, sometimes people carry around deities in baskets, you know, like the little Bal Gopal or like that. So we were walking past one village and someone brought a basket and he said, Darshan, Darshan. So like, okay, wow, of course, see Krishna. And as they opened the basket, boom, snake. So the snake follows you. My reflection on this was that it's like one type of person learns through hearing. So like we heard the shouting the first day of the snake, we heard about the snake. The second person learns by observing, like observing the effects of something. So the second day we learned by seeing the snake skin. But if you don't learn, then you have to learn by experiencing. So the next day we saw the snake. And also one of the days in Brajamandal, there was a frog in our tent as well. So this was really speaking to me, this verse. So Chaitanya Charitamrita is actually revealing the real philosophy. And just share a few things with you here today. Most people know about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in terms of how he spiritually changed the world. Okay, sorry, my handwriting's a little. Bear with me. He spiritually changed the world. He brought the Harinam Sankirtan. He brought the most effective means of spiritual elevation. And everyone knows Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for that he made such a spiritual impact in the world by bringing the holy name. What people don't know so much about is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also transformed the world culturally. Because what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did is he brought down a culture in which spirituality was only restricted to a certain select group of people. He said you don't need to be a Brahmin, you don't need to be born in a certain type of family, you don't need to have a certain type of social status. Spiritual elevation, spiritual opportunity is available to everyone. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu opened up chanting in every single home in Bengal, and that was actually culturally turning things upside down, because previously if you wanted to contact God, you had to go to a priest and you had to go to a temple. But Mahaprabhu broke all of that hierarchy down and he said you don't need any of this. All you need to do is open your heart. Shri Radha Nandanishwara ki Shri Radha Gokulananda ki. What can I do? I grew up in So culturally, Mahaprabhu turned the social hierarchy upside down. He taught people, you're not elevated because you're a man. Women can be more elevated. You're not elevated because you're a Brahmin. Sudras can be more elevated. You're not elevated because you were born in an aristocratic family. Sometimes someone born in a simple family can be much more elevated. And therefore Mahaprabhu reversed the hierarchy. He reversed cultural tradition and showed that real elevation is based on purity. But what most people also don't know is that Mahaprabhu also transformed the world philosophically. And what he did is he actually brought something which was the essence of all philosophy, the essence of all education. And therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, most people don't realize his philosophical contribution, but his philosophical contribution was actually profound. And so here Kaviraj Goswami is saying that what we learn about in Chaitanya Charitamrita is how his philosophy is the conclusion of all education, the conclusion of all philosophies, all traditions, all worldviews culminate in what is presented in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So today I'll kind of share with you a little bit about that. Broadly speaking, there are many ways to look at the worldviews that are prevalent in the world, but this is one way to look at it. If we draw a quadrant like this with two axes, and we say this axis represents the material world, and we say this axis represents the spiritual world, then basically, if you look at every worldview, it has to have a conception of what is the material world and what is the spiritual world. In Sanskrit, the word for worldview is darshan. So basically, everyone in the world has a darshan, because everyone in the world has to view the world in a certain way. Some people have a worldview based on philosophical exploration, because they've studied different things and they've come to the conclusion that this is what I believe in. And people who haven't studied establish a worldview based on psychological disposition. By their mentality, they're approaching the world in a certain way. So if someone comes up to you and says, I'm not philosophical, everyone has a philosophy, because there has to be something by which you live life. There has to be a worldview. So broadly speaking, we can say there are 4 types of worldviews which people may ascribe to. One worldview, so if these are the 2 axes, and we say here, those who believe the material world to be real, those who believe the material world to be unreal, and those who believe the spiritual world to be real, and those who believe the spiritual world to be unreal. Then you can basically summarize the 4 main worldviews of life in this quadrant. This quadrant on the bottom right represents materialism. Materialistic people believe this world is very real. They take the world super serious. They're up on Monday morning at 7 a.m. on London Underground going into work, because they believe this world to be real, but they don't believe there's anything beyond this world. There's no spiritual world. Eat, drink, be merry, enjoy, and then Haribol. Right? So that's what they believe. It's just a one life game. And then after that, 6 foot under or 7 foot under, whatever it is. The interesting thing, although materialistic people don't believe in a paradise, they don't believe in a spiritual world, what they're basically trying to do is they're trying to make this world into the spiritual world. And how do they do that? They try to make this world a technological paradise. Or what they try to do is they try to make this world an entertainment paradise. In other words, through technology and entertainment, they actually try to experience bliss and what the spiritual world actually is. But no amount of technology, no amount of entertainment satisfies. At the end of the day, we are drawn back, we're brought back to the reality of the misery of the world. And therefore, materialism doesn't believe in a spiritual world, tries to create a spiritual world here, and anyone who espouses to this worldview is trying to create a spiritual world through their endeavors, but it never works. And therefore, this worldview brings frustration. Now, the bottom left is the darkest worldview. This is the worldview where those people who don't believe the spiritual world is real and they don't even believe that this world has any substance to it. This worldview is known as nihilism. They look at the religious people, and the religious people say there's happiness, there's a spiritual world, there's a God, every step is a dance, every word is a song, and they're like, I don't believe you. And then they look at the materialistic people who say, eat, drink, be merry, enjoy, have a good time, you have all the opportunities in the world, and they look at them and they say, I don't believe you. Nihilistic people don't believe there's anything in this world, and they don't believe there's anything beyond this world. So this is a very, very dark worldview. And many nihilistic philosophers, one nihilistic philosopher said, the only question is, when should I commit suicide? Now here in the top left, who are those people that believe there's a spiritual world, but believe this world is unreal? What is that philosophical position? Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. Brahman is real, the spiritual world is real, and everything that we're seeing here, this is all just an illusion. It's all Maya. Maya, Vad. Vad means a philosophy, so the philosophy of illusion. So this is impersonalism. Those who believe that this world is ultimately unreal, it has no substance, but it's just a temporary illusion that when we break it, we understand that we're all one, we're all Brahman, we're all spirit. And then this worldview in the top right is known as devotionalism or personalism or bhakti. The bhakti philosophers tell us that this world is real. Sometimes you'll read in the Bhagavatam, it said the world is unreal. But what they mean by the world being unreal is not that it doesn't exist. This exists. This is real. But it's not real in the sense that it's temporary. And therefore the devotional philosophers, the personalist philosophers believe the world is real, but it's temporary. However, the real reality is the spiritual world. The spiritual world where we all exist, Satchit Ananda, in a form of eternity, bliss and knowledge. And so, if you look at all of the philosophies of the world, any worldview, it will fall somewhere in between these philosophies. Either it will fit neatly into one quadrant, or it will take aspects of different quadrants. But basically, you can look at all of the philosophies of the world and basically collapse them into all of this. And every single person in the world, whether they know it consciously or they do it unconsciously, are ascribing to one of these worldviews or a combination of them. The other interesting thing about this is that, say for example, you follow this worldview, which I'm guessing most of you in here do, unless we have some undercover Mayavadis who are spying on us. The interesting thing is that even if we ascribe to this philosophy, what will happen is that at certain points we will interact with the world, sometimes with tinges of the other philosophies. So you can be a devotee, but then sometimes you can tend towards impersonalism in different ways. You can be a devotee, but sometimes you can act like a materialist. And did you know, sometimes you can be a devotee, but sometimes you can be like a nihilist, like, I don't think it's worth it, nothing's worth it, I don't think I'm ever going to get there, and I don't see anything here worthwhile. And then a nihilistic tendency can also. So this is very, very interesting, that basically everyone has a darshan, everyone has a worldview. And what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying is that if someone gets their worldview wrong, scholars who educational people who analyze everything to the nth degree but don't understand the proper conclusion of philosophy, they're like the croaking of frogs. Because what will happen is that all of these other worldviews will eventually lead to frustration. And so what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did is he actually came to the world and he brought the highest philosophy. He distilled all the different philosophical concepts and brought it to its essence. And if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, then what you'll read is that Mahaprabhu, although he's known for his chanting, what people don't realize is he had the most profound philosophical conversations. What Mahaprabhu did is the first thing he did is he interfaced with different religions. You'll find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he has conversations with Muslims. He has conversations with Buddhists. He has conversations with, according to one biographer of Mahaprabhu, he also had conversation with Sikhs. He met Guru Nanak, according to one biographer, Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra. There's not so much said of Mahaprabhu interfacing with Christianity or other Abrahamic traditions, but you can say that through his philosophical discourses, he actually addressed even philosophical points within those traditions as well. So Mahaprabhu, he actually spoke to all the religions. He interfaced between Gaudiya Vaishnavism and all the world religions. When you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, then you'll see that not only did he do that, but in terms of within the Vedic tradition, he interfaced and he spoke to all the different traditions within the Vedic tradition. So within the Vedic tradition, you have four main branches: Smartas, Shaivites, Shaktas, and Vaishnavas. So these are the four main strands within Vedic teachings. So Smartas are those who are basically impersonalists. Shaivites are those who revere Shiva. Shaktas are those who worship the feminine divine or the energy. And Vaishnavas are those who worship Vishnu or Krishna. So if you look at Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially in the Madhya Leela, when Mahaprabhu is traveling through South India, then basically he has conversations with all of these traditions. Impersonalists, who does he speak to? Prakashananda Saraswati, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. Shaivites, he goes to Shiva temples and he meets Shiva devotees, many occasions. Shaktas, Mahaprabhu himself grew up in Navadvip, in Mayapur, and there was a strong culture of Tantra and other things like that. So people like, for example, Gopal Chapal was said to be doing tantric worship. So therefore he also spoke to the Shaktas. And then obviously he spoke to all the Vaishnavas. So now, if you look, Mahaprabhu also spoke to the Vaishnavas. There are four main strands of Vaishnavas. There's the Sri Sampradaya, which comes from Lakshmi. There's the Kumaras, they have a Sampradaya. There's a Brahma Sampradaya. And there's a Rudra Sampradaya. So, in the Sri Sampradaya, who did Mahaprabhu have a conversation with from the Sri Sampradaya? Very famous. When he traveled in South India. Vyankatabhata. He went to Sri Rangam and there he had deep conversations and he established Krishna's supremacy. The Kumara Sampradaya, that is the Sampradaya which is coming through Nimbarka, and Mahaprabhu in his early life in Navadvip, he defeated one scholar who was in the Nimbarka Sampradaya. Anyone know who that is? Keshav Kashmiri. He was a Nimbarki. Brahma Sampradaya, that comes through Madhvacharya. So Mahaprabhu went to one place, and in this place he had conversations with those who are known as the Tattvavadis. Anyone know what that place is? Udupi. You can go there today. A really nice mangoes there. Just a side point. So there he had conversations with the Tattvavadis and he established the supremacy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And in the Rudra Sampradaya, which comes through Vishnu Swami, there's a very famous Sampradaya which continues prevalently even today. Anyone know which that one is? Begins with V. Vallabha, yeah. The Pushti Marg, Vallabha Sampradaya. So Mahaprabhu also had conversations with him. So Mahaprabhu didn't just speak to all the religions. He didn't just speak to all of those within the Vedic tradition. He even spoke to all of those within the Vaishnava tradition. And what the Chaitanya Charitamrita does is it explains how he distills through every single one of these conversations what is the conclusion of all philosophy. And then finally, what Mahaprabhu does is he establishes the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Some people think Gaudiya comes from the word Gauda, Gaudadesh. That's true. Because Mahaprabhu was born in Gaudadesh, and therefore his Sampradaya is known as the Gaudiya Sampradaya. But many scholars also say the reason his Sampradaya is known as Gaudiya is because the word Gaudiya comes from the word Gaur or Jagri. You know Jagri, right? So Jagri, for any of those who, all of you have, you're in Hare Krishna temple. All of you who have had Jagri, you know how sweet that is. Very, very sweet. You can't experiencing anything sweeter than Jagri. And therefore some scholars say that the Gaudiya Sampradaya is known as the Gaudiya Sampradaya because it's the sweetest. It's the distilled sweetness of all philosophy. In English we would say it's the icing on the cake. So it's the conclusion of everything. And what Mahaprabhu does in the Gaudiya Sampradaya is he establishes the highest rasa, or the highest types of relationships and most type of intimate relationships that you can have with the Supreme Lord. And not just that, he explains the highest bhav, the mood of separation, and how when you relate to the Lord in the mood of desperation and separation, then the emotion reaches incredible heights. So therefore we have to understand that when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is making statements like this, that Mahaprabhu is actually teaching the conclusion of all philosophy, it's not just some kind of fanatical statement. Because what Mahaprabhu does is he's addressing all the worldviews that people could potentially have in terms of how they approach life. And what he's doing is he's showing systematically how the essence of every single worldview and the truth that is contained within every single worldview he has incorporated into the Gaudiya Sampradaya. And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had 27 biographies written about him. Ever met anyone who's had 27 biographies written about them? Mahaprabhu did. And it's said that of those 27 biographies, 7 are prominent, and 7 are those that we have access to in terms of accurate manuscripts. But of those 7, Chaitanya Charitamrita, in front of us here today, this is known as the final word, the essence of all the biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, Chaitanya Charitamrita doesn't just establish Mahaprabhu's life and pastimes, but it also establishes the highest philosophy. And if you look at every philosophy in the world, then every philosophy in the world and what it espouses in terms of how we should approach life, that is addressed within the conversations of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And therefore Kaviraj Goswami says there are many people who are speaking philosophy, but it's like the croaking of frogs, because what they don't understand is that they haven't brought it to its mature conclusion. That conclusion is found in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and therefore he makes this point. The education cultivated by so-called learned scholars who do not believe these statements of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the tumultuous croaking of rooks. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so maybe I'll just leave some time. If anyone has any questions, comments, or anything I said which requires greater clarification. All right, see a lot of hands there. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll go here.
Mark, you mentioned how Lord Chaitanya met people with... Thank you, Mark. You mentioned how...
Yes.
how there are... Lord Chaitanya met people of all of these different faiths, philosophies. What about, can you give examples of Lord Chaitanya meeting people from these three philosophies, impersonalism, nihilism, and materialism? And share maybe those pastimes.
So impersonalism is clear. He met Prakashananda Saraswati, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, like that. Materialism is also clear because Mahaprabhu met many. For example, Jagai and Madai, very materialistic, right? So there are many pastimes like that. So what about nihilistic? Did Mahaprabhu meet anyone who's nihilistic? In one sense, you can say Buddhism is somewhat of a nihilistic tradition. Because Buddhists, in one sense, they believe, what is the Buddhist philosophy? Shunyavad. Mayavad means everything is illusion, but Brahma Satyam. But Shunyavad means everything is void. So they believe that this world, in one sense, it's an illusion, it's a creation based on desire. And the moment you annihilate desire, you annihilate the material world. So the material world, in one sense, is just a figment of our imagination because we have desire. And they believe that after, the goal is nirvan. So what does nirvan mean? It means no variegatedness, no nothingness. So in one sense, although Buddhists aren't classified as nihilists, in one sense, it is a nihilistic philosophy because they don't believe there's really any substance here and they don't believe there's any substance beyond. And so when Mahaprabhu travels in south of India, then he also meets Buddhist philosophers. Of course, we know Buddhism also comes, Keshava Drita, Buddha Sharira, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. So that philosophy itself was espoused by Krishna. But anyway, that's another point. So does that help? Yeah? All right.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
When you travel to India, 90% of people know who Ram is, Krishna is. Not many people heard about Lord Chaitanya. And there's so many sampradayas out there in India. Why is that?
Why don't they know about Lord Chaitanya?
Yeah, there's thousands sampradayas.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Why do most people not know about Mahaprabhu? The key is to understand that Mahaprabhu came for an external reason and an internal reason. The external reason that Mahaprabhu came to the world is he wanted to teach the world about Harinam. But the internal reason why Mahaprabhu came to the world is because he wanted to experience the love of Srimati Radharani. So therefore it's explained, E Mata Bhakta Bhav Kori Angikar Apaniya Chari Kori Bhakti Korila Prachar. That what happens is that when Krishna comes to the world as Mahaprabhu, he doesn't come as God. He comes in the Bhakta Bhav. He comes in the guise of a devotee. And therefore, those who don't study, they won't be able to understand the divinity of Mahaprabhu because Mahaprabhu doesn't come as God. You see, they say if you find a philosophy where the devotee cries for God, you have to understand this is a very advanced philosophy. But if you find a philosophy where God cries for the devotee, you have to understand this is even more advanced. But if you ever come across a philosophy where God becomes a devotee to cry for himself, this is the highest philosophy. So God comes as a devotee to cry for himself, to experience what does the devotee experience in relation to me. And therefore, most people, if you read the Encyclopedia Britannica and you look up Chaitanya, then it will tell you he was a 16th century bhakti saint, which is true. But what they don't realize, E Mata Bhakta Bhav Koriyangikar. Yes, he came as a saint, but the real understanding is that he's God. Therefore, Mahaprabhu is known as Channa Avatar, which means a covered incarnation, and therefore most people don't know. Most people have no idea. Even when I came into the manor first and I saw a picture of Mahaprabhu, I was like, why is Jesus Christ on there? To me, it looked like Jesus Christ. You know, so we don't, it's very confidential. Mahaprabhu is a very, you know, so okay, all right. Yes, okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. So right now one of the hot topics is, because you always see in Oxford Street Christian preachers and they're always, you know, going at it and saying Jesus is the only way. So we also understand from this verse that Krishna consciousness is the only way, but at the same time, we also understand that variegatedness that we can have. So could you explain that a little bit, and
Not
also
exactly.
how to sensitively...
Well, it's not exactly that we say we're the only way. Okay, so like here you can say, is it working? All right. So, it's not exactly that we are saying we're the only way. Can you see? Abrahamic. See that, right? I'm going to just say dharmic here, and specifically we're referring to Sanatan Dharma, what we're practicing. The line here is my way or the highway. That's what generally Judeo-Christian traditions will say. What we're saying, what Krishna says, is from your place, at your pace, find my grace. So, here, God is jealous. Even Christian traditions will say that. He's a jealous God. He doesn't want you to worship anyone else. But in dharmic traditions, we say it's a zealous God. Zealous means incredibly enthusiastic. And so within our tradition, we believe in multi-level spirituality. The technical name for what we're teaching the world is polymorphic, multi-level, bi-monotheism. In other words, we're monotheistic. We believe there's one God. But we're bi-monotheistic because we understand that God has a male and a female counterpart. At the same time, that bi-monotheistic divinity is polymorphic. It comes in this world in different ways. Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan. Not just that, but that divinity comes to the world under different names. Allah, Yahweh. And it's multi-level. So that in our tradition, we will say that yes, this is the highest, but that doesn't mean that anyone who's practicing anything else won't get any benefit. Because from your place, at your pace, you can access God's grace. In other words, that's why the Vedic revelation is so advanced, Because what it does is it provides an entry point for every single person, and it shows how there can be unity in diversity. And therefore we're not like Christian teachers who will tell you that unless you follow us, the truth, the way and the light, see you later, alligator. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that yes, Mahaprabhu is giving something which is incredibly elevated. And if you're in that space, take it. And if you're not, no problem. Take whatever you can and you will make progress. Does that make sense? Okay, sure.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your class. Just on the point of like the nihilists and the more like jnani types, often I see a lot of people that are like, they're very heavily like caught by their mind, and you can see how it like visually weighs down their person. What do you think the best way, based on your reflections, to like melt the heart of a jnani is?
How do you melt the heart of a jnani? There's nothing like a cheesecake. The position of a jnani or a nihilist is a position which is coming from frustration. It's a position in which one has been frustrated by the world, they've been let down, they've seen the dark side of life, and therefore they've lost hope, they've lost vision, they've lost the sense that there's something more. And so, love is the only way to reignite the passion for life, And therefore, Mahaprabhu, when he first met the Mayavadi sannyasis, the jnanis, he didn't just jump into a philosophical conversation with them. You remember what happened when he went to Varanasi and he met the Mayavadi sannyasis and they invited him for lunch. All he did was he went in and 3 things conquered them. Number 1, his beauty. Number 2, his effulgence. I mean, they were Mayavadis, they were into the Brahmajyoti. But when they saw the effulgence of Mahaprabhu, they're like, this is even more than the Brahmajyoti, And the 3rd thing which melted their heart was his humility. His beauty, his humility, and his purity. If you want to melt someone's heart, someone who's a hardcore jnani, your purity, your beauty of character, and your humility. And same thing with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Did Mahaprabhu launch into a philosophical discussion with him? What did he do? He just sat there and he listened for 7 days. In other words, sometimes we think that to change people's philosophy, you have to defeat them. Once a man had a jacket on and the wind said, I'm going to get him to take his jacket off. And so the wind just blew and blew. And as the wind blew stronger and stronger, the man just held onto his jacket even tighter. And then the sun came along and said, make way. Said to the wind, let me do it. And then what did they do? The sun just came and it just shone. And as it shone and the heat came out, and the guy was like, whoa, it's getting a bit hot here, Took his jacket off. Sometimes we think we have to be like the wind, argument like the wind. But sometimes we just have to be the sun, very warm, very kind, very generous, very genuine, very loving. Thank you.
So my question is about Brahman realization. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he converts the Mayavadis into Vaishnavas. Is the only failing of the Mayavadi philosophy is that they don't go far enough? They just get to Brahman realization and they don't go any further? Or is there something specifically different between Brahman realization and the Mayavadi philosophy?
So it's important to make a distinction between Mayavadis and Brahmavadis. So these are actually different. Mayavadis believe Krishna and Bhagavan, or the Supreme Divinity, that form is Maya. But Brahmavadis, they believe that there is Bhagavan, but rather what they do is they prefer to worship Brahman. In other words, they don't deny the existence of Krishna or Bhagavan, but it's just that they have a preference to worship, or they don't know about Bhagavan, or they're just kind of not aware of the personality of God. So therefore, Brahmavadis are not as bad. They can be elevated. But Mayavadis, therefore, Kaviraj Goswami says, Jivera nishtar lagi sutre koilo vyas Mayavadi bhashya sunile hoya sarvanash. That everything was compiled by Vyasadeva in the Vedic literature, Mayavadi bhashya, but if you hear the commentary of a Mayavadi, if you hear the interpretations of a Mayavadi, hoya sarvanash, everything is lost. That philosophy is very dangerous, because what it does is it doesn't just annihilate your identity, it doesn't annihilate Krishna, just annihilate Krishna, it annihilates all the possibility of experiencing spiritual love. So Mayavad is a very, very dangerous philosophy, but there are many who are not necessarily Mayavadis, but they're impersonalists in the sense of being Brahmavadis. And they, if they're taught about Krishna, for example, the Kumaras, if you read the Bhagavatam, the Kumaras didn't have a conception of, or they weren't worshipping Bhagavan. But as soon as they had that stimulus of smelling the leaves, the tulsi leaves from the feet of the Lord, they were immediately changed. So Brahmavadis can change, but Mayavadis, Mayavadi Krishna Aparadi is said, they are inimical, so that's harder.
So the Mayavadis actively reject the Supreme Person.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone from the ladies' side? Okay, maybe last one.
As a follow-up to that, where does the Sunyavadi fit? There's Brahmavadi, Mayavadi. What's the difference with Sunyavadi?
So Shunyavadis, they just believe in nothingness. So there's no God. There's no deity. There's no ultimate purpose. It's just nothing. So where do they fit in? I don't know. Nowhere, I think. It's amazing, all these philosophies. Like, say, for example, there's all these philosophies in the world. They're really like, for example, you have theism, and then you have atheism. But if you look at historically, there was something which happened along the way which was known as deism. Does anyone know this philosophy? Deism. It's such an interesting philosophy. I don't understand why anyone would believe in this. But in this philosophy of deism, what they believe is that there's a God who's the creator. They believe that there's a God who's the creator. But then, what they believe is that, but there's nobody in control. In other words, what deists believe is that there was a God who created the world, But after he created the world, he was kind of like, okay, see you later, it's up to you guys to do what you want to do now. And that God is no longer involved in anything in the world. And therefore everything is going along according to the laws of nature. And there's no God in control. There's no, and you think like, come on guys, make up your mind. Is like God there or is he not there? No, God is there. He created it, but he's not controlling it. And that was one step towards atheism. So there are people who espouse this philosophy. So yeah, I mean, there's so many combinations. Like, so you have theism, belief in a God. Monotheism, belief in one God. Polytheism, belief in many gods. Deism, belief in God who's a creator but not a controller. Then you have autotheism. That's the technical name for Mayavad. I am God. Now the latest thing in the world is apatheism. You know this one? It's another worldview, another croaking of the frogs. Apatheism is the philosophical position of apathy. It doesn't even matter. I don't have a position on God or whether he exists or he doesn't exist. I just think it's an irrelevant question. It's not relevant to my life. Therefore, apatheists say it's not even worth talking about because it has no bearing on life. That's another interesting philosophical position. So yeah, they all fit in somewhere. So these are all the forest of philosophies. But the point is, everyone has a philosophy. Whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you made a decision or not, everyone has a philosophy. But the problem is, most people have not thought about what philosophy they want to follow. They're just kind of doing it by default. And therefore Chaitanya Charitamrita is there to explain all these different philosophies and then to ultimately show that what Mahaprabhu presented in the Gaudiya Sampradaya is the final word, the conclusion, the essence. Sarva Dharma Sar, the essence of all religion. All right, thank you very much. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai.